Welcome to MBM's Weekly Training Booster. We are Weekly Training Booster number 10. This week, we're going to be talking about what is the H.B.D.I Herrmann Brain Dominance Instrument. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Sarah, who's going to ask me some questions to help bring this to life, and I'll do my very best to answer them. Sarah, thanks for joining us this week. Great to have you here. Let's start. What's your questions for me on the H.B.D.I assessment?
Okay, thanks, Andy. First question, what is the H.B.D.I assessment?
Good stuff. All right, so the H.B.D.I assessment, or the Herrmann Brain Dominance Instrument, is a psychometric test that allows people to understand their thinking preferences. And once they can understand their different individual thinking preferences, they can then start to understand and value, become more tolerant of others. So what we've really got here is a metaphoric model of how our brain works, taking into account the left and right hemispheres and the upper and lower parts of our brain. And what the H.B.D.I profile effectively says is that each of these four quadrants is responsible for different thinking, decision-making, and communicating preferences. Now, the thing with the H.B.D.I profile is there's no better or worse profile, there is no right or wrong. But what it does is allow us to start to understand why we have differences and similarities between different people. And using this model can be truly powerful for many, many reasons.
Okay, thank you. And would you say that it was a personality test or not?
No, not at all. So the H.B.D.I profile, unlike others, does not measure personality. It also doesn't measure temperament. It doesn't measure intelligence. It just purely looks at our preferences to these four different quadrants, and we can use our whole brain, and that's absolutely critical to remember. We just have preferences. Now we can have a preference to what is referred to as the A quadrant or the blue quadrant, and that's about facts. It's about understanding logical, analytical, factual, here and now information. If we then continue round, and I'll bring each of these quadrants to life. So that's our blue quadrant. We move down into the green quadrant or the B quadrant. This is about organization. It's about sequence, about steps and stages. So people with a high degree of preference here, super organized, and they can see the steps and the stages required in terms of understanding their individual thinking processes. If we continue around and we move around into the C quadrant, this is the red quadrant. This is about feelings. It's about people's interpersonal skills, their communication skills, understanding the needs and the wishes of others is super important to those with a high preference here. And then lastly, we've got that D quadrant, that upper right or yellow quadrant, that's about holistic conceptual thinking. It's not about the here and now, but it's about synthesizing and integrating with other people in the future and understanding the why of what those thinking preferences look like. So not about personality, more about preferences to thinking and decision-making styles.
Okay, thank you. And the H.B.D.I profile, in terms of the quadrants, are we able to utilise every quadrant, or are we just limited to one specific?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And it's a very good question because more often than not, when we are introducing the whole brain thinking model, people start to do that pigeonholing thing of you're a red, I'm a yellow, I'm a green, you're a blue. And the reality is we can use all of our brain. Of course we can. It's an incredibly powerful piece of kit. So in those initial stages of understanding and the initial stages of understanding, getting our head around the profile, people do that pigeonholing stuff. You're a blue, you're a red, you're a yellow, you're a green. Mm-hmm. The reality is we can use all parts of our brain. We just have preferences to maybe 1, 2, 3, sometimes even all 4 of them. And it's about understanding those degrees of preferencing, the degrees of preference, not then using it as a limiting factor. Oh, sorry, I can't do that thing. I don't have a strength or a high degree of preference in a certain quadrant. So we use all of our brain, and we should never be limited by the preferences that we've got. It's about embracing them.
Okay, thank you. And out of the 4 quadrants, which quadrants work best together?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's no simple answer. The reality is we naturally gravitate to and get on with certain people. Now, one of the reasons that could be is because maybe they have a very similar preference to our own. So blues will naturally get on with blues, reds will naturally get on with reds, etc. And that's okay because it's on the same wavelength. Conversation is free flowing, thinking processes are very similar. To take that one step further, I also believe there's a real strong connection between those that have different thinking preferences. So certainly from a personal relationship point of view, we often find that partners have very different thinking preferences to their counterparts, because actually some of those analogies of chalk and cheese and opposites attract kick in which case they then complement each other. And as they start to build a level of tolerance and understanding for individual differences, they then can actually complement each other by maybe strengthening up an area that doesn't naturally come as well to them. So yes, certain quadrants get on with certain quadrants, i.e. kind of within the quadrant, but actually also I think people should think broader and wider and allow the different thinking and preferences of others to help complement their own and to work better alongside each other by having that level of tolerance and understanding, and you know, understanding that people bring different perspectives and opinions, and that's all okay.
And based around that, in terms of an organisation, do you need all quadrants within an organisation to make it successful?
I don't know about make it successful, but I think it would help make it more successful by utilising whole brain thinking. And because we have our different preferences, if you've then got a team that has balance across all of the quadrants, you may have 2 people in the green, 2 people in the yellow, 2 in the blue, whatever that may look like, then actually you've got a real balanced set of thinking going on. We sometimes see that companies or teams can be limited because maybe they are heavily prioritized or heavily preferenced towards one particular quadrant, in which case they may not naturally think into the other quadrants as easily. So, and I often say, people say to me, oh, can we use HBDI as a recruitment tool? Yes, you can. And actually, maybe you need to do the opposite of what you would naturally do. And when you're interviewing someone, you go, oh, I got on really well with them. We seem to think they feel very natural, very normal, whatever we define normal as. Actually, maybe you should employ the person that you didn't get on well with, maybe that didn't communicate in the way you expected them to, maybe didn't answer the questions in the way you would have liked them to, because maybe, just maybe, they're coming at it from a different quadrant to your own, in which case they add further balance to the team. So having a balance across all quadrants for a team can be just super powerful, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of when you're under pressure, do you thinking styles change?
They can change. So as part of the questionnaire that you can complete to get your own individual HBDI profile, it also takes into account where you go under pressure, under stress, and under duress. Now, some people, and we all witness this, some people have those changes in what we would class as their behaviours when they're under pressure. They might want to go into themselves, or they may do the opposite, want to vocalise more. They may become super organised or super unorganised, or whatever that may look like. So yeah, when we're under pressure, we can exhibit different behaviours. And also some people stay pretty consistent. So yeah, you see someone who under pressure, they just seem to have the same sort of behaviours as they do when they're not under pressure. And again, this profile explores that, because there is no right or wrong, there is no better or worse. We are who we are. And this profile just helps us to understand that. So yes and no, it is absolutely individually based.
Okay, thank you. And as a final thought, can you name a few famous people who've completed the test and what quadrant they are?
Yeah, I'm going to answer it a little bit differently. So I'm going to bring to life some of the people throughout history. Now, these people haven't filled out the Herrmann profile because it wasn't sometimes possible to do that. But we've used something called, or HBDI, the Herrmann company, have used something called proforma profiling, and looked throughout history at some of the standout people to help bring potential profiles to life. So if I was to start with the upper right, the yellow quadrant, that's about future, we would find maybe the likes of Einstein are there, Da Vinci, Picasso, those big visionary thinkers, those big people that saw beyond and challenged the norm. And people like that will tend to sit in there. We often see that these people are kind of inventors or entrepreneurs, and that's typical yellow behaviours. If we were to come down into the lower right quadrant, the red quadrant, this is about feelings, about people. The likes of Mother Teresa or Gandhi would be in there. Those people that dedicated their lives to caring for others from a very humanitarian point of view. Into our green quadrant, couple of people come to mind. J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover was instrumental in founding the FBI. How we look at his profile and understand his set of thinking preferences, much like Margaret Thatcher, was coming from a very organizational, sequential step form point of view. And then coming up to our last quadrant, that blue quadrant, Bertrand Russell, Isaac Newton, big, logical, mathematical, philosophical thinkers, those people that are at the absolute cutting edge of kind of science and understanding logic, rational thinking from a mathematical problem solving point of view. So Bertrand Russell, Isaac Newton would be and would sit in that blue quadrant for me. I think for me it's truly fascinating to look at people throughout history and start to understand where they sat, all with a view to helping people to better understand where they sit in the world and to accept who they are, because, and as I mentioned before maybe a couple of times, there is no better or worse, there is no right or wrong. The H.B.D.I. Herrmann Brain Dominance Instrument really just starts to help you understand your own thinking, communicating, and decision-making preferences. So thanks for those questions. I hope that I've answered them in a way that you wanted to hear the answers, but I think moreover it then brings that to life. So thanks, Sarah. All right, so that's going to conclude our weekly training booster. We are at week 10. We will continue to do that. We're going to put in the links today if you are interested and would like to know more about the H.B.D.I. profile, where you can find out some more information. And if you wish to take your profile, we'll put that link in there so you can explore that as an option as well. Likewise, any questions or thoughts, please put them in the comments. We'd love to have and continue the conversation around the H.B.D.I. profile. So thanks again, Sarah. We maybe see you again in a future video, and thanks for watching this week's MBM Weekly Training Booster.
Thank you.